Today on the All in Wellness Show, we're going to talk a little bit about mindset and wellness and how empathy can play a role in our lives positively. Welcome to another amazing episode of All in Wellness. Today we have a very special guest with us, Erin Thorp. Introducing Erin. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Thank you so much.
Happy to return the
Erin,
favor.
No, I love it. And I was on your podcast as well. It was a great recording, talking a little bit about empathy. And I would love to describe your background a little bit. So
Yeah,
Erin
please.
is, a speaker, an author, and a coach for leaders who struggle with conflict, communication, and performance during high stress times. And she supports them in navigating difficult conversations, building powerful teams, and communicating with empathy so that they can lead confidently. Erin has a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from the University of Calgary, and she is an associate certified coach through Integral Coaching Canada, and she has over 20 years of experience leading in construction projects and teams. And in 2017, you authored Inside Out Empathy, and you began speaking and coaching about using the superpower of empathy to build effective teams. And in that book, you share your own stories of leadership and what you learned along the way. And it's the book that you wish you had when you just started out. And you're very committed to discovering your leader within and supporting who you lead with impact from the inside out.
Yes.
And I would love to hear a little bit more about your story and how you got started. And can you describe to our listeners anything that you'd love to point out about your passion?
I started out my career as an engineer and just thought that's what I would do for the rest of my life. And then you get a few years into it and I had a couple kids along the way, 3 kids along the way. And then you find yourself in this moment where you're just like, is this it? Is this everything? And I think there were a few, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of synergistic events that happened that sort of led me down this path. So one, our oldest daughter got diagnosed with ADHD and some learning disabilities. I was at a point in my career where I was trying to figure out, do I step into these bigger leadership roles while I still have all these kids at home? Like, how am I going to do this all? And then I had some experiences with my own leaders that were just like some really great and some not so great. And it led to a bit of a pause in my career that wasn't related to a maternity leave, because that's the only other times I had taken time off from my career in about 2016. And that's, I started writing and thinking about, okay, if I was going to talk about anything, what would it be? And what's the message? And that's really where this theme of empathy bubbled to the surface, and just been following that thread ever since. Ended up back in corporate for a bit and kind of put into practice some of the things I believed in and tested it out. And then by the end of 2020, I was ready to step out on my own and been doing that ever since.
I love your story. I think that's wonderful. And thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that, because I think it can help some others that are maybe struggling with just being happy within what we're doing every day, right? And making sure that we have the passion and being there for our family. That can be difficult.
Yeah, as we were talking about before we got going on the show, these things, they pop up in our family life and they take a lot of energy.
They do. And we want to be present, and it's hard if we're not able to be there for them. And so I have a question. If you have any insight on, and maybe in the last 5 years, what have you become better at saying no to? Are there any distractions, invitations, things like that, or realizations?
I think so. I would say it probably started with a quote I heard at a conference. It was something to the effect of, stop lighting yourself on fire to keep other people warm, was the theme of the quote. And it basically was in the context of, we give and give to many aspects of our lives, our careers, our families, our passions, our communities. But it's like we set ourselves on fire to keep everybody else warm. And in the midst of doing that, we burn ourselves out. And I think that was a very pivotal moment for me, probably the right time in my career and life to really hear that, and it hit home pretty solid. And so I'd say that was probably the starting point of then really looking at, where am I lighting myself on fire to keep other people warm, and where can they start to do that themselves? Where can I step back? Where can I say no? And I wouldn't say it was big no's in any one area of my life. It was just small moments of discernment. So it was about that time that I decided I couldn't really do a full-time corporate job and a side hustle at the same time, and I really needed to pick one and go all in. I decided to step away from the corporate role, and the company I was working for was very supportive. It was a very open door to go back if it didn't work out. But I was able to then focus that energy there instead of continuing to spread myself too thin. Some of the volunteer commitments with my children, I was able to, again, be discerning and go, this is where I can give and this is where I need help. This is what I can and can't do. And yeah, and even just with friends, acquaintances, extracurricular activities, what are the things I'm saying yes to but really are burning me out? And what are the things I really want to say yes to and feel like I don't have time? And how can I make time to do those?
I agree with you there. I love that. And I found myself in the similar situation, gosh, probably 10 years prior. And it was so hard. I was the people pleaser. And I was always
Totally.
going to say yes, no matter if it worked for me or not. And I realized I came to a standstill similar to what you experienced. Just realized like this is a total going in the wrong direction for me, burning me out, and just feeling from my soul like I'm not guiding myself to where really I should be. And I found it was really hard with the first time I did it. I just found it was okay to say no and be able to focus more on one thing at one time. And even a friend just being able to say, you know, that just doesn't work for me, but here's what does. And finding
Absolutely.
their reaction, they weren't upset. And it was just always when you're a people pleaser, it's hard to know how are they going to react. And I think we teach people how to treat us, right? We set the appropriate
100%.
boundaries.
We teach people how to treat. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I think there's also this notion that when we're setting boundaries, if they're the right boundaries, quote unquote, I don't know if we're sharing video or not, I'm air quoting here. If we set the right boundaries, then it will be easy and it will feel good. I have yet to have, you know, a time where saying no to somebody because of my own personal preferences or my own boundaries has felt really good. In the moment, it's very difficult to set those boundaries and to hold them and to say no or to ask for help. It's very difficult still to this day, and it's been a practice. I feel better afterwards in the, like, when I'm not spread too thin and running all over the place and stressed out and burnt out. So I think we need to dispel this notion that it's going to feel good if we're setting the right boundaries, because I don't know, for me, it just hasn't ever. It always feels awkward. It always feels like I'm letting someone else down. It always feels like there's this naggy little voice around being selfish. And I just check in with myself and I'm like, okay, I hear you, voice, but that's not the actual truth. The truth is this is what you need. And so we're going to do it. And if I find out that I can do more or take a different action, then I will. But for now, this is what I'm going to do. So I think it's like taking action through that discomfort is really important.
Just love that. I think it's hard when we're more of that nurturing person in nature. And it's okay. It's really okay to take care of us. We have to, and take care of us first, then we can give more to others. Wouldn't you agree?
Totally. We hear it all the time. I don't know if you travel a lot, but if you're ever on an airplane, you hear it all the time. Put your own oxygen mask on before helping someone else. And I remember traveling with my son recently, and he looked at me and said, would you really do that, Mom? Would you help me before you put on your own? And I'm like, I honestly don't know. I'm like, I probably would help you before I put on my own oxygen mask. And there's the truth of the realities. I think most of us, if we saw someone in need on an airplane who needed help with their oxygen mask, we would probably help them before we did our own. And here we are, like, running out of air to breathe. And that's really the metaphor for life.
That brings me to my next question, I think is very fitting, is when you feel overwhelmed or have a hard time staying focused, if you've lost your focus temporarily, what do you do? What questions do you ask yourself? I notice for myself, if I close my eyes and take some deep breaths and just for 10 seconds, it really helps me to refocus and not stay in that stressful mindset.
Yeah. I think for me, the steps for getting out of kind of that overwhelm or lack of focus, for me, lack of focus shows up as I multitask, thinking I'm getting more done, but I'm really not. I've got 80,000 tabs open on the computer. I'm trying to do too many things at once. So I think the steps for me are really just writing the list. So I do the brain dump of here's everything I'm thinking about right now in this moment. And then I actually get up and I have a small, it's like a 1K loop in the park around my backyard. And I just put my boots on. It takes me 15 minutes to walk it. And I get out there and I just walk that loop for 10, 15 minutes. Easy to fit in between appointments and calls, doesn't take too long. I don't have to like change clothes or anything like that. So it's just like a really easy way to get outside, get some fresh air, some sunlight. And then I find when I can come back to my desk and sit down, it's okay, then I can prioritize the list and I can start back.
I love that. And getting in nature and just getting that change of
Totally.
environment.
For me, it's huge. Sometimes it's just sitting out on my deck or going to the backyard and putting my feet on the grass. I live in Canada, so the grass is under snow most of the year. But just, again, being outside really does make a difference for me.
It's so hard, right, when we have so much coming at us. That you start our day and we don't know as an entrepreneur how much is what's going to come at us. And so I think I agree with you. I took that change myself about
Yeah.
2 years ago, just needing to separate for 10 minutes, no matter how busy, it's always going to be there, but we just
That's
need
right.
that time. And it's such a change in my cortisol levels and just resetting my environment and just being able to come back with a fresh, clean mind.
And as you
just
said, like your focus, like you can just actually get more done when you're focused.
Absolutely, it's amazing. But how would you say gratitude plays a role in your life? I find practicing gratitude involves recognizing and appreciating the good in our lives, no matter how small. And I found myself, I'll share some exercises, but if you have anything that you can incorporate in your, for anyone out there for the daily routine to foster maybe more of a grateful mindset.
Yeah, I'd love to say that I am good at routine and I'm really not. I try. For me, gratitude practices really show up when I notice that my train of thought is going down a path of focusing on the things that are wrong. So whether that's, oh, there's no cash flow in the business, or oh, I don't have any appointments next week, or oh, I'm too busy and I don't have any help, or whatever that looks like. It could be even just, man, the kid's schedule is busy this week and I'm run off my feet, or I don't feel like I have help with the dinner. It's first of all, so it's when I notice those thoughts that I'm like, okay, it's this little game I play with myself around, okay, what's 3 things that have actually happened that prove this wrong? Because I think our brains will always it'll find evidence to support whatever it is you're looking for. So if you want to look for all the reasons there's no cash flow, or all the reasons there's no appointments, or all the reasons the kid's schedule is busy, or all the reasons you're burnt out, like you'll find the evidence. Your brain will search the database and it will find the evidence that supports that thought. So it's this little game of like, how can I interrupt that and search for some different evidence?
Right.
So whether that's opening up my invoicing system and being like, actually, you have 3 invoices that are going to be paid on Friday, or you have, or okay, there's no appointments next week. How could we get one? And you had 6 last week. So let's be grateful for that. And sometimes it's even, I would say when I'm waiting for my coffee to brew in the morning, it's just, okay, what is going well? It's just really retraining our brain to focus on what's going instead of
Yeah.
looking for what's going wrong.
I think subconsciously, you're right. I think our mind will go to the negative, or
Always.
it's unfortunate, right? Because we do have, and I do that myself, so many blessings, but there's a lot of moving parts to what we do running a business, and there can be a lot of negative thoughts that come into play, right? And I try so hard just to offset and look at, okay, let's focus on these things today. Let's focus on what we can do and the blessings, like you said, that we have been successful in, and some of those great occurrences. And I find scientific studies even have shown that cultivating gratitude can improve our mood and just strengthen relationships and even enhance our physical health. And I think that's so important to recognize
Absolutely.
for so many that struggle when
Absolutely. It's a huge part. And again, you start to have 1 or 2 of those like thoughts like, oh yeah, I am grateful for this, or I do have that support. Again, your brain just reorients and now you're like looking for evidence that supports that thought. And it's just, yeah, you can quickly change direction.
I think so. So focusing more on the wellness piece, are there any actions you take when getting home from work, or maybe you work from home, but anything that are simple habits that just help to create wellness in your daily life?
I try so I do work from home and it's always there because, like you said, as an entrepreneur, there's always something to do and something to fix. But the rest of my family is either working kind of Monday to Friday, 9 to 8 to 4 sort of hours, or the kids are in school. So I do try to focus my workday for when other people are working so that when we're home as a family, we're home. Some of the things the morning, I definitely make it a priority to move my body in some way, whether that's a workout class or a walk with a dog, and then eat breakfast and shower and get ready as if I were going to a place of work. And that really helps set the tone for the day. Like I am at work now. And then usually after my last call of the day, or when the kids get home from school, is when I'll shut things down, whether that's I'm actually done or I just have to make a list for what's waiting for me for tomorrow, but then really try to as much as possible. And I would say 95% of the time that really works. When I'm traveling for work and I don't have family commitments and things like that, I would say that's when I kind of work beyond those hours, let's say, and do some of the more kind of maybe creative projects or behind the scenes things to keep the business moving. But that's really few and far between.
I find sometimes when we're in a different space, the creativity,
Absolutely.
it's so wonderful, right? When it's
Yep.
unexpected. And then
It is unexpected and you just want to capitalize on it. And it's nice because I don't have any other things drawing my attention away from it. So I can maybe work a little longer or just let myself go as long as I can. And if the creativity's flowing. And so it's nice.
I find too the brain dump, I really love that piece. And I do think no matter how busy we are, I've loved not every time that this happens, but I try to set a goal of daily 15 minutes a day, even just thinking about brainstorming, definitely writing down maybe some things that I want to achieve or some goals. And it can be hard when we're busy, but I think sometimes when you're in a different environment, or I travel as well for work, it sometimes comes to me very easily. And it's really nice. I think it's good to get out of our environment so that we can have those scenarios really come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first started working from home, one of the things that I practiced quite religiously when I first started working from home years and years ago was I would just take a walk around the block when I was ready in the morning, and that kind of signaled, okay, it's time to go to work. And then at the end of my day, I would do another walk around the block. That was like, okay, that was like my commute, my transition between the days. And that has been helpful for me early on. And then I've used that with clients as well that kind of struggle with like, how do I shut down at the end of the day? That's usually the bigger problem. Or for a lot of people that do work from home, it's like I get up and I just open my laptop and start working. And it's if you don't take the time, no one's going to force you to take the time for you. So we've got to be a little bit more disciplined.
It's hard being myself. I call myself a workaholic, and I
Totally.
feel like you probably are in the similar path, but it's hard. It really is hard when you're dedicated and you want to keep going. But I found for my son when he was in middle school, and it was hard, and I decided instead of saying just a minute or just give me 10 minutes, I want to be present when we do have the time. So I try to make a shift as hard as I do work to have some evenings, even one night a week, just to have that be family time and do dinner together and not worry about what's coming in my email or just being able to spend that time, devoted time together. And we would laugh and have fun watching whatever it is that we're doing, maybe a movie, playing chess, something like that. And my son's older now and he's working, and I want to try to focus on that. And it's hard. It's easier said than done too.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, you're always going to have kind of those ideas or the thought will pop in, oh, yeah, I got to do that. And I have a couple different tricks. Like I have a notebook usually handy, so I'll write it down. Or sometimes I just send myself a quick email or text that's here's the idea or the thought you had. And so then it's waiting for me tomorrow when I open it up. So I don't feel like I have to go and action it right away.
I just love that. Isn't it great? And you know that you can work on it when the time is right.
Yeah.
And we can focus our energy more.
Yeah, because I've noticed also when I don't do that, then the next day I'm like, oh, I had a really good idea last night. What was it? And then I'm irritated because I've lost the idea and just learned to really like get it down somewhere.
I think it's great. I think, is there any favorite failure or an apparent failure that set you up later for success? Or do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Oh my goodness. A favorite failure of mine. Nothing major is coming to mind. I think when I think of or how I've had to reframe some of the no's, and I think we get a lot of no's, especially now as a speaker, I'll just say we're applying all the time in conferences and we're getting the no's. I really try to just reframe that as it's either not the right audience, it's not the right time. Of course, I'm looking at it like, how can I refine the message? How can I do a better job of aligning my message with what they need? But I also think there's a huge part of it that's just a little bit of like faith and just trusting that what is supposed to happen is going to happen.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's also sometimes God will take us out of circumstances to,
Yes.
you feel like it's a negative situation, but then you later may realize, okay, he was pulling me out of that to put me here.
Yeah.
And realizing that it is a blessing. And that alone, when you can recognize that, I think is really important. Right?
It's very important. And we often can't see We see the glossy side that people want us to see, and we can see something and it's, oh, well, you might feel like you're missing out or you're not there, or, you know, but it's, yeah, there could be so many different reasons why you weren't supposed to be there.
It's amazing. So
Yeah.
I just think having empathy like you focus on is very important too. Is there anything you'd like to touch on that for some listeners out there that maybe could benefit?
I think what's bubbling to the surface these days is really, especially when we talk about it in kind of team settings, whether that's small business or big corporations, I like to call it the elephant in the room, really, because so much of the conversation is around how do we engage, how do we retain, how do we innovate, how do we capitalize on our human capital that we have in these organizations and teams and get the most out of people. But really what we're not talking about is how do we connect with them? How do we understand where they're at? How do we demonstrate empathy? How do we connect? Right? And to me, that's the elephant in the room that's not being talked about right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's the skill set that's going to be required to lead into the future, because the technical problem solving can and will be done by machines, AI. Like these are the things, but there's the human element that will never be able to be replaced. And so that is what's going to become more and more important. And so being able to relate to another human is going to be the skill set that is required for our future leaders.
I think the power of connection is so vastly overlooked. And even when you're leading someone, or we're talking about just being a good leader in general, but running your business, connection to clients, it's just that connection.
Yes.
You can't put a price tag on that. And I think it's so important to, like you said, just our world is changing. And I think it's so evident. We get disconnected easily.
And I think one of the observations that I'm just, I don't know, like peeking around the corner on this one, but it's an interesting thing I've been trying to tease out. I think for anybody selling a product, a service, anybody in business who has to market something, we actually practice empathy quite substantially when we think about our customer, when we think about what do they need and how will we meet that need or fix that problem. And what's fascinating to me is we don't do that same thing when we then turn internally and we look at our team. We don't stop and think about what does our team need, what might be going on in their world, how can we meet their needs, how do we make this easier for them to come to work and to engage. And so it's an interesting paradox, I guess, that I've really started to notice.
Mm-hmm. And I can relate to that being a leader myself. Talking about corporate world, I've had staff compliment me and say, wow, you really take the stress out of this training because I feel like you're my friend, not my boss. And I think how I relay back to them is just, I've been in your shoes. I know exactly how it feels to not really feel like your voice is heard, or that I'm just a number here, that I'm not valued. And that's not a good feeling. And so I really relate on their level. But also I feel like if I don't do that, how can I expect them to follow my footsteps or to practice some of the things that I'm doing? And I think it starts with us, right? Just being a good leader.
Yeah.
But that, I think, it's very uncommon, unfortunately. It's just not seen very highly out there.
Yeah, I think there's definitely two schools of thought in the workplace right now. There's the do as I say, not as I do mindset,
Yes.
which doesn't really work because as human beings, we do what you do. Mm-hmm. We're constantly watching for behavior and we're taking our cues from behavior, not from words. And that's really the invitation to anybody who's leading. And I think we all lead because we all have to lead ourselves first. And then family, community, and work is that we lead in all those areas. We really got to look at how we're showing up.
Getting good examples, and like you said with our kids, it's really important for me. I think being respectful also is very important. And just recognizing we're all in the same, we're all human. None of us are better than the other. And I've always had that mindset. We treat the janitor the same as we would treat the CEO. It's just we're all the same. We're all here together to work together. I think it's great. I love that mentality. And so I have a great question for you. If you had a gigantic billboard, what would you put on it?
What would I put on it? Probably something to the effect of empathy's a muscle and you've got to work it.
I like that.
Might be a cause of conversation, but...
And it's so simple. I think it would...
Yeah.
It makes people think. That's interesting. I never thought about that.
Yep.
And wow, how many people, if we were focusing on that, where our world would be so much better.
It could be. Yep. I'd like to think it would be.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. I really like that. And just it's just metaphorically speaking, just getting a message out to millions or billions, or it could be just those few words. What a game changer, just planting the seed, even for anyone that maybe
Yeah,
hasn't had that train of thought or that focus before.
exactly.
What would you say is one of the most worthwhile investments that you've ever made? It could be money, time, energy.
I would say it all centers around any time I have invested in getting to know myself better, taking care of myself. So whether that is time, money, or energy, usually all three, it elevates how I am able to show up and lead in my family, in my business, in my community. It usually pays back dividends anytime I do make that investment. Not always easy to make the time to spend the money, to invest the energy. And yet I'm reminded again and again every time I do that it is so worthwhile.
And what a blessing when you can look back and appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it changes the
exactly.
perspective, don't you think? I think for me,
It does. I used to have a really fairly ingrained belief that anytime I would do that, it was very selfish and it was like you had to earn it somehow. And was I worthy of it? And is it worthwhile? And is it indulgent? And all of those things. And I've come to learn those are a lot of my kind of saboteur voices and really just lean into the fact that it is important to do
feel
those
like
things.
the American way, unfortunately, that is the mentality. It's really unfortunate. And because I work with people globally, this is not their vision.
No.
And they look down on us like, why are you working so hard? And we do, like, even working in my spa, the wellness space, we have to, unfortunately, it shouldn't be a guilted feeling of I'm taking that time to do
Totally.
a wellness treatment for myself. And it's only
Yeah.
going to help us with the mindset piece. If we're taking care of us 20% of the time, I like that mentality too. Focusing on taking care of us 80% of the time, we can give more and work at a higher level. I think if we could try, it's just our natural reaction is I feel guilty taking the time. I should be doing this, or feeling like we always have to be productive.
Yeah.
When I feel like really it's just we're overworking our
Yeah, that
mind.
rest has to be earned. And that's definitely been a big paradigm shift for me these last couple of years is I actually do better work when I am rested. And it's the reverse, right? How can I
Absolutely.
rest to do my best work?
I agree. I think
Yeah.
so. I think, and how has maybe spirituality changed your life? For me personally, the concept of being led by God, and for many, I think faith provides a sense of purpose and direction. And we can, like we just talked about, having discernment and divine guidance in our lives, and how embracing a spiritual connection can really enhance our overall well being. And this might include like some prayer, meditation, or simply being open to signs and messages we received. How can you relate with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is definitely a higher power, and it's definitely shown up from a very young age for me. My parents got sober when I was about 9. So we just grew up in a house that believed that there was a bigger plan and a higher power. And I think definitely has played a part in my life in terms of just how yeah, like we talked about earlier, handle failure or setbacks or no's. And yeah, just really trusting that there is some kind of plan, even when we can't see it.
It's very interesting you said. My dad passed away when I was 9 years old. Luckily, my mom was very much, she had a strong faith, but we both became very connected with God. I really had no one else to turn to other than God at that point. And boy, what a change. And
Yep.
just what he has instilled and shown me. And I think that for me is such a shift, and being able to recognize over so many years what he is doing. And even sometimes we have bad things that happen or negative occurrences, and then stepping back and seeing how God is working in that occurrence. And I think it's been really profound for me.
Yeah, and I think all of those events of our lives only have meaning because we assign the meaning. And so when you can step back and trust that there is a bigger plan, sometimes those really horrible things aren't, you can see them through a different lens. You can see them through the opportunity or the gift that we got because of it.
I think it's pretty amazing. I think I've never looked at anything as a regret, but I had been through most some people even just significant hardships by the time I was even 30. Before that, even in my 20s, then some people in their entire lifetime don't go through, but I didn't look at it as bad. I just looked at, okay, this is a great learning experience. There's something I can get out of this. What
right.
is it trying to teach me too? But
Yep.
having the faith, I just don't know how I could do life without having faith.
Exactly.
I feel bad for anyone that doesn't have a strong faith, but I just think it's important to share a little bit about our story, because I would say earlier on in my life, I never was open to that and talking about the higher power or God. And I think it's so, he wants us to, but also it's just needed because we just don't know how many people we could help that
Yep.
maybe are really struggling, that need to hear how faith has worked in our lives.
Absolutely.
Are there any favorite books that you have that you've been given as a gift and how they've greatly
voracious,
influenced
yeah.
your life?
I'm a voracious reader. I don't know. I probably could send you a laundry list of books. What would I say off the top of my head about books? I'm just looking over here at the stack that's sitting beside my desk because that's
problem.
probably where I'm headed next. So I think probably one of the most surprising ones for me that really did help tie back to our earlier conversation around the whole learning to say no, and also ties in with the gratitude practices, one called Fierce Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. And it's just, we often think about, what I love about it is a bit of the juxtaposition between fierce and self-compassion. Like they're two words that we probably wouldn't put together. But she talks about it in a way that we have to be just as boundaried with ourselves as we are with other people. So when we can offer compassion outwardly to others, how good are we at doing that with ourselves? And I think that's one of the books that's really changed my perspective on that. I think I love all of the works by Brene Brown. They've been hugely impactful, each one in its different way, and all came into my life at the time that I needed them, which is really, really excellent.
I love the book. Like you said, it came in when I was open and ready. That's the one thing. It was one of the Wall Street best, but it was because I was doing so many things and I was volunteering my time for it and running the chair. I was a chair of a parade and doing all the things for my staff and running my business and trying to build the clientele. And then I was just ready. And it was like, that book changed my life. It was amazing just to be able to learn. We can't really succeed if we're not focusing on that one thing that we want to really propel, right? And just expand on. And I think that was perfect timing about 5 years ago in my life, just
Absolutely.
needing that. Would you say there's a favorite mentor of yours, or what's the best advice they've given you?
I'd say, sorry, I'm having a book thought too that just popped into my head. So the current book, I'm going to answer this question first, but currently my team and I are reading The Unicorn Team. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I have not.
So it's interesting and causing all kinds of really great conversation around who's doing what and what roles are we playing, and helping us get clear on things that might be missing in the team. So that's been really exciting. So that's our current read. As far as mentors go, I would say I got a mentor, I'm going to say maybe 2014, 2015, something like that. I was in a corporate role at the time and kind of thought that's where I would be headed and stay in this corporate life. But she was really instrumental in just allowing me to have conversations about, what my passions were. She was instrumental in getting the book published. She really just held a lot of great space, asked a lot of great questions, and it's turned into a great, beautiful friendship. I still refer to her as my mentor, and I think you've taught me more than I've taught you, but I think that's probably been the most profound sort of mentor relationship.
What a blessing, because it's really needed, and you can be there for each other.
Yeah, and not just in a work sense, like in a whole life sense. Everything from just being there to kind of support as you grow in your marriage and as you grow in raising these children. And so very personal support, but also very professional support. So it's been a huge blessing.
I just love that. I think it's great. It's a wonderful thing when you find someone that can help you when the time is right. And would you say there's great advice that you could give a college student who is about to enter the real world? What advice should they ignore?
This one's very personal because I have a college student right now, but I would say it's just, I think the best advice is it's okay to change your mind. I don't think any of us really know ourselves that well at 17, 18, 19, 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the whole purpose is to get to know yourself. And so you may start out doing one thing and end up doing an entirely different thing. And I would say that's actually the definition of success. If you get to know yourself and to figure out what does light you up, where take all the classes that seem random.
Yes.
Just because you entered one faculty doesn't mean that's the one you should graduate from. And if you need to take some time to figure out what to do, I think that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. I have a similar scenario. My son is 21 and he's very happy, but I also told him what you start out doing may not be
Yeah.
what you end up finishing with, and that's okay. And I think it's great to take all the experiences throughout whatever he's doing to put together and finding that passion. And you could be happy now, but things can change. And it's okay to
Absolutely.
change. It doesn't have to be concrete for life.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that can be scary for a college student. Like you said, they're just trying to find out where they're meant to be and who they really are. And it's a very difficult time. I think our 20s is difficult.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people think they're helping by giving us advice and, that you should do this and you should do that. And this is what I see for you. But it really comes down to they don't know what that feels like on the inside. And so it is a time to just explore and be okay with following those nudges.
I love, that's how I describe them too, like those little silent
Yeah.
nudges that we hear.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't really open to that until my 30s. And I just love seeing my son having that open mind and just being okay with where he's being led to, and just seeing that he's really listening to those little nudges, which I just don't see that very often.
Yeah.
So, well, is there any bad recommendations that you hear in your profession or area of expertise?
Did you say bad recommendations?
Yes.
I think the one that still is out there a little bit that always grates on me a bit is there's two. So one, that we need to learn soft skills in leadership. I don't think they're soft at all. I think we're referring to the personal skills, the human skills. And so that one kind of grates on me a little bit. And the other one is just that there isn't room for emotion at work. I think it's a huge part of what drives us as human beings, and the leaders that tap into it, that understand it, that know how to work with it, they have more engaged teams. Like, they're more innovative, they're more engaged, they retain their people. There's been study after study done, report after report every year that this is what is required. And so it's just, I get why people don't want to do it, because it does require a certain amount of self-awareness, and you got to dig in and get to know yourself, and that can be scary. But I think if leaders really do want the things they say they want, then this is the starting point.
I love that. I try to instill that too in our meetings, and looking at our P&Ls, profits and losses, and not attaching emotion to that business part of it, and just seeing what's working, what's not, and maybe cutting something and incorporating something new.
Yeah.
And it can be easier said than done, but I think you're right. I think it's very key to not attach emotion to whatever it is that we're going through and seeing. Is there any purchase of, say, $100 or less that has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months, or a recent memory? My listeners love specifics like a brand or a model, where you found it, etc.
This is a tricky one. You've got lots of good questions. I don't know. You can tell I'm a thinker.
That's okay.
What would I say? I can't think of anything.
That's all
I'll
right.
have to come back to you.
We'll come back to that. And it's also like good to have brainstorming and just
Yeah.
see what comes to mind, and anything else that you would like to touch on for our listeners that you would love to share with the empathy and role that you're playing.
Yeah, first I would invite them to check out either our episode on tactical empathy, my podcast, or any of the episodes that have dropped recently. And if they're all interested in adding this tool to their leadership toolbox, to just reach out. I'm sure we'll have all those links in the show notes, either on social media or directly on my website.
I really have to tell the listeners I really love your show, and it's very impactful, and I think can really open up your mind, and just seeing a different vision and seeing things in a different role, and I think it can help so many. So I hope that people take the effort and subscribe to your show and
Thank
really
you.
see the benefits, because I think there's just different great topics and guest as well. And yes, so that brings me to my last question. If it was your last day on earth, what advice would you give?
I think it would just be, again, it goes back to don't be afraid to change your mind. I think we're constantly exposed to new things and learning and growing, and who we are today is not who we were yesterday or last week. And so I think it's okay to change our mind. It's okay to change courses and to not wait. If I could have told myself 7 years ago that it would have turned out like this, I probably would have left corporate 3 years earlier. Like it's just, and given it a shot and trusted myself and believed in myself. And so I think it's okay to try.
I love it. Our ancestors, it was definitely not that vision. It was more so you finished what you started. It's kind of like your dinner plate. You eat everything on your plate.
That's right. That's right.
And I think it's good to be open and, like you said, just following our path and being happy and just being okay with change. And I love that piece. So, well, I really appreciate you joining us today.
Yes,
and I
thank
think
you.
we'll anywhere that you can be found, and I'll put links in the show as well. But is there anywhere that people can find you?
Yeah, so the website is www.erinthorp.ca, and Tactical Empathy is the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. So those are probably the 2 best places to start.
Oh, so wonderful. I hope that our listeners listen to your podcast as well. And it's been great with recording with you today. I appreciate the time and thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Until next time. We hope you enjoyed some insight from Erin and hope you can join her show, Tactical Empathy, for additional insights and guidance in your daily lives. And that wraps up another inspiring episode of All in Wellness. Thank you for being a part of our community and for tuning in today. We hope you found valuable insights and encouragement to live your life fully and authentically. Remember, the journey to wellness, gratitude, and embracing your faith is ongoing, and we're here to support you every step of the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.